Kore Jagamala
Jalade Shivana Mala Kore Jalamala
Jalade Shivana Mala Kore Jagamala
Jalade Shivana Mala Kore Jalamala
Shiva Shukranarada Premi Gadagada
Shiva Shukanarada
Shiva Shukranarada Premi Gadagada Bhakti Vinoda Deke Gora Sampada Bhakti Vinoda Deke Gora Sampada Namo Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashatya Shatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Yamuna ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Maharaj ki jai. Shri Gaur Sai ki jai.
They're like exactly the same?
Twins.
Yeah, they look exactly the same. The difference between them is that Nityananda's left hand is, our right hand is higher than Lord Chaitanya's left hand. Right?
Yeah, what Chaitanya is?
Huh?
Lord Chaitanya is okay now. But Chaitanya is right, Lord Nityananda is left, right?
So yeah.
Yeah, that's the golden complexion. Blue is.
Yeah.
So like this Chaitanya. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya's, Lord Nityananda's left hand is higher.
Yeah. Because he's older.
He's older? Yeah.
Yeah, he's older than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, yeah. Yep. Okay, let's read from the Bhagavad Gita.
Krishna was coming?
Aiden?
Krishna
He told me what?
Krishna was coming.
No, he's not giving a class. We're just gonna read from the Bhagavad Gita today. This thing is streaming.
Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna.
We're gonna read from the Bhagavad Gita.
No catch.
That was fun. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Maybe one more. How about Jai Bhavanatha before we start?
Yeah, let's do that.
But do you down play the Raga again? Sorry? Do you play the Raga again?
No, okay.
Ready?
I was thinking if we could include some more here so that all the
Here, take this book. Here, man, take this book. Take this book. Take the book.
take me.
Take this book. Take this book. Take this book. I got one. Oh, this is for you. You want to take this one? Alright. where were we at? We haven't wrote on the board in like months. Over a month. Over a month.
How should the camera be? How should the camera be angled?
Yeah, chapter, yeah, I think it is.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how we can put the camera. Just put it like that, I guess.
Huh?
You gotta press it.
What do I gotta press?
Yeah, you gotta press the bottom right thing.
Oh, the original audio.
Oh, original audio?
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, press it and then go to the right, all the way to the right. And you go to,
Okay, it's on.
yeah, it's on.
The DVD.
I have seen on that.
All right.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, I think we're on text 1 of chapter 8.
Chapter 8,
Yep.
text number.
Number 1. Chapter 8, text 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna Uvacha, King. Wait. We're just reading, right? There's not going to be a class. It's just reading the Bhagavad Gita, that's a class.
Okay.
You knew that? I'm sorry. Never mind. Arjuna Uvacha, King Tat Brahma Kim Adhyatam Atman Kim Karma Purushottama Adibhutam Chakim Proktam Adidaivam Kim Uchyate. Yeah, the same person who reads the Sanskrit.
You starting, they read the Sanskrit. You all will read the Sanskrit together and you will read the remaining parts.
One at a time each verse? Okay.
Randomly around. Let's say start with text 1. So this Sanskrit will be read by all three of us.
Yeah.
Then we will continue, you alone will continue with this one. Next, we all will read this Sanskrit. Like I will continue with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Text 1. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Purport. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers these different questions of Arjuna, beginning with, quote, what is Brahman? End quote. The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the Supreme Authority, able to give definitive answers.
Text 2. Adhiyagya katham kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale cha katham yeyosi niyatatmabhi. Translation. How does this Lord of Sacrifice live in the body, and in which part does he live, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Purport. The Lord of Sacrifice accepts Indra and Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primeval demigods. including Brahma and Shiva, and Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by yajna performances. But here Arjuna asks, who is actually the Lord of yajna, sacrifice? And how is the Lord residing within the body of the living entity? Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudana because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjuna because Arjuna is a Krishna conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjuna here addresses him as Madhusudana so that Krishna might kill the demonic doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. Now, the word Prayanakale in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjuna fears that at the time of death, those who are in Krishna consciousness will forget the Supreme Lord because at such a time, body functions are disrupted and the mind may be in a panic-stricken state. Therefore, Maharaja Kulashekara, a great devotee, prays, "My dear Lord, may I die immediately now that I am healthy, so that the span of my mind may enter into the stem of thy lotus feet." This metaphor is used because the swan often takes pleasure in entering the stem of lotus flower. Similarly, the mind of the pure devotee is drawn to the lotus feet of the Lord. Maharaj Kulashekara fears that at the moment of death, his throat will be so choked up that he will not be able to chant the holy names. So it is better to die immediately. Arjuna questions how one's mind can remain fixed on Krishna's lotus feet at such times.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavodhyatma Uchyate Udabhavo Avakaro Visharva Karma Samgita. The Supreme Lord said, "The indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called the Self. Action is pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruit of activities." Purport. Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman there is Par-Brahman. Brahman refers to the living entity, and Par-Brahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In material consciousness, his nature is trying to be the Lord of matter, but in spiritual Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When living entity is in the material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivatma and Brahman, but he is never called Para-Brahman. The living entity, Jivatma, takes different positions. Sometimes he emerges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with matter, and sometimes he identifies him with the superior spiritual nature. Therefore, he is called the Supreme Lord's marginal energy. According to his identification with the material or spiritual nature, he receives a material or spiritual body. In material nature, he may take a body from any of the 8,400,000 species of life, but in material nature, he has only one body. In material nature, he is sometimes manifested as a man, but in spiritual nature, he has only one body. In material nature, he is sometimes manifested as a man, demigod, an animal, a beast, bird, etc., according to his karma. To attain material heavenly planets and enjoying their facilities, he sometimes performs sacrifices, yajna, but when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man. In the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifices to attain heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, then the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes on the form of grains, and the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman, and thus the living entity again attains the human form of to perform sacrifice, so repeat the same cycle. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. The Krishna-conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. He takes directly to Krishna consciousness and thereby prepares himself to return to God. Impersonalist commentators on the Gita unreasonably assume that Brahman takes the form of Jiva in the material world, and to substantiate this they refer to chapter 15, verse 7 of the Gita. But this verse also speaks of the living entity as an internal fragment of myself. The fragment of God, the living entity, may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord, Achyuta, never falls down. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Jiva is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entity, is distinguished from Para Brahman, the Supreme Lord.
Text 4. Adibhutam Sharobhava Purushascha Daivatam Adiyagyoham Evatra Dehe Deham Vela. Translation. Physical nature is known to be endless and mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord represented as a supersoul, dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. Purport. The physical nature is constantly changing. Material bodies generally pass through 6 stages. They are born, they grow, they remain for some time, they remain for some duration, they produce some byproducts, they dwindle, and then they vanish. This physical nature is called Adibhutam because it is created at a certain point and will be annihilated at a certain point. The conception of the universal form of the Supreme Lord that includes all the demigods and their different planets is called Adidaivatam. The individual soul, Jiva, accompanies the body. The Supersoul, a plenary representation of Lord Krishna, is called the Paramatma or Adiyagya and is situated in the heart. The word Eva is particularly important in the context of this verse because by this word, the Lord stresses that the Paramatma is not different from him. The Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, seated beside the individual soul, is the witness of the individual soul's activities and is the source of consciousness. The Supersoul gives the Jiva an opportunity to act freely, and he witnesses his activities. The functions of all these different manifestations of the Supreme Lord automatically become clarified for the pure Krishna conscious devotee engaged in transcendental service of the Lord. The gigantic universal form of the Lord is called Adidaivatam. The gigantic universal form of the Lord called Adidaivatam is contemplated by the neophyte devotee who can approach the Supreme Lord, who cannot approach the Supreme Lord in his manifestation as Supersoul. The neophyte is advised to contemplate the universal form whose legs are considered the lower planets, and whose eyes are considered the sun and moon, and whose head is considered the upper planetary system.
Text 5. Antakale cha mameva smaran bhutva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nastai akta samshayaha. Shri Gaurika ki jai. Translation. And whoever at the time of death quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Purport. In this verse, the importance of Krishna consciousness is stressed. Anyone who quits his body in Krishna consciousness is at once transferred to the transcendental abode of the Supreme Lord. The word smaran, remembering, is important. Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. To remember Krishna, one should chant the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, incessantly, following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya, being more tolerant than the tree, humbler than the grass, and offering all respects to others without requiring respect in return. In In such a way, one will be able to depart from the body successfully, remembering Krishna, so attain the supreme goal.
Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante kalparam tam tam eti kunteya satam bhavavadina. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Purport. The process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is here explained. How can one die in the proper state of mind? Maharaj Bharat thought of a deer at the time of death, and so was transferred to that form of life. However, as a deer, Maharaj Bharat could remember his past activities. Of course, the cumulative effect of the thoughts and actions of one's life influences one's thoughts at the moment of death. Therefore, the actions of this life determine one's future state of being. If one is transcendently absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not physical. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being to transcendental life.
Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu manusmarayudhya cha maya pita manobuddhir mami vaishyasya samshayah. Translation. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will obtain me without doubt. Purport. This instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna. By chanting Krishna's name, one will be transferred to the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, without a doubt.
Text 8. Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasa nanyagavina paramam purusham divyam yati parthanu chintayan. Translation. He who meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha or Arjuna, is sure to reach me. Purport. In this verse, Lord Krishna stresses the importance of remembering him. Once memory of Krishna is revived by chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, by this practice of chanting and hearing the sound vibration of the Supreme Lord, one's ear, tongue and mind are engaged. This mystic meditation is very easy to practice and it helps one attain the Supreme Lord. Purusham means enjoyer. Although living entities belong to the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord, they are in material contamination. They think themselves enjoyers, but they are not the supreme enjoyer. Here it is clearly stated that the supreme enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its different manifestations and plenary expansions as Narayana, Vasudeva, etc. The Lord can constantly think of the object of worship. The devotees can constantly think of the object of worship, the Supreme Lord, in any of his features, Narayana, Krishna, Rama, etc. by chanting Hare Krishna. This practice will purify him, and at the end of his life, due to his constant chanting, he will be transferred to the kingdom of God. Yoga practice is meditation on the super soul within. Similarly, by chanting Hare Krishna, one fixes his mind always on the Supreme Lord. The mind is fickle, and therefore it is necessary to engage the mind by force to think of Krishna. One example often given is that of a caterpillar that thinks of becoming a butterfly and so is transformed into a butterfly in the same life. Similarly, if we constantly think of Krishna, it is certain that at the end of our lives we shall have the same bodily constitution as Krishna.
Text 9. Kavim Puranam Anushashtiram Anorane Yam Samanusmaredya Sarvasya Tataram Nan Achintya Rupam Aditya Viram Varanam Tasa Tamasa Parastat. Translation. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, and who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental is beyond this material nature. Purport. The process of thinking of the Supreme is mentioned in this verse. The foremost point is that he is not impersonal or void. One cannot meditate on something impersonal or void. That is very difficult. The process of thinking of Krishna, however, is very easy and is factually stated herein. First of all, he is Purusha, spiritual, Rama, and Krishna, and is described herein as Kavim. That is, he knows past, present, and future, and therefore knows everything. He is the oldest personality because he is the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. He is also the supreme controller of the universe, maintainer and instructor of humanity. He is smaller than the smallest. The living entity is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair. But the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. Therefore he is called smaller than the smallest. As the Supreme, he could enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as the Supersoul. Although so small, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything. By him all these planetary systems are sustained. We often wonder how these big planets are floating in the air. It is stated here that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. The word achintya, inconceivable, is very significant in this connection. God's energy is beyond our conception, beyond our thinking jurisdiction, and is therefore called inconceivable, achintya. Who can argue this point? He pervades this material world and yet is beyond it. We cannot even comprehend this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond? Achintya means that which is beyond this material world, that which our argument, logic, and philosophical speculation cannot touch, that which is inconceivable. Therefore, intelligent persons avoiding useless argument and speculation should accept what is stated in scriptures like the Vedas, Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understanding.
Prayanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva provor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam padam purusham upaiti devyam. Translation. One who, at the time of death, fixes his life hair between the eyebrows and in full devotion engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. In this verse it is clearly stated that at the time of death, the mind must be fixed in devotion on the Supreme Godhead. For those practiced in yoga, it is recommended that they raise the life force between the eyebrows. But for a pure devotee who does not practice such yoga, the mind should always be engaged in Krishna consciousness, so that at death he can remember the Supreme by his grace. This is explained in verse 14. The particular use of the word yoga balena is significant in this verse, because without practice of yoga, one cannot come to this transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord at death unless he is practicing some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. Since one's mind at death is very disturbed, one should practice transcendence through yoga during one's life.
Text 11. Yadaksharam Veda Vido Vadanti Visanti Yad Yatayo Vitaragaha Yad Ichanto Brahmacharyam Charanti Tatte Padam Sangrahena Pravakshe. Translation. Persons learned in the Vedas who utter Omkara and who are great sages in the renounced order enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. Purport. Lord Krishna explains that Brahman, although one without a second, has different manifestations and features. For the impersonalist, the syllable Om is identical with Brahman. Krishna here explains the impersonal Brahman in which the renounced order of sages enter. In the Vedic system of knowledge, students from the very beginning are taught to vibrate Om and learn of the ultimate impersonal Brahman by living with the spiritual master in complete celibacy. In this way, they realize two of Brahman's features. This practice is very essential for the student's advancement in spiritual life. But at the moment, such brahmachari, unmarried celibate life is not at all possible. The social construction of the world has changed so much that there is no possibility of one practicing celibacy from the beginning of student life. Throughout the world, there are many institutions for different departments of knowledge, but there is no recognized institution where students can be educated in the brahmachari principles. Unless one practices celibacy, advancement in spiritual life is very difficult. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has announced, according to the scriptural injunctions for this age of Kali, that no process of realizing the Supreme is possible except the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Text 12. Sarvadyaram samyam mano kirti drudyacha vurdhyadayatmana pranamashtito yoga dharanam. Translation. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart, the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. Purport: to practice yoga, as suggested here, one first has to close the door of all sense enjoyment. This practice is called pratyahara, or withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. Sense organs for acquiring knowledge, such as the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch, should be fully controlled and not be allowed to engage in self-gratification. In this way, the mind focuses on the supersoul of the heart and the life force is raised to the top of the head. In the 6th chapter, this process is described in detail, but as mentioned before, this practice is not practical in this age. The best process is Krishna consciousness. If one is always able to fix his mind on Krishna in devotional service, it is very easy for him to remain in an undisturbed transcendental trance, or in samadhi.
Text 13. Om Idyekaksharam Brahma Vyaharam Mamanusmaram Yaprayati Tyajat Deham Sayati Paramagatim. Translation. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. Purport Om. It is clearly stated here that Om, Brahman, and Lord Krishna are not different. The impersonal sound of Krishna is Om, but the sound Hare Krishna contains Om. It is clearly recommended in this age that if one quits his body, at the end of this life chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, he will reach the spiritual planets. Similarly, those who are devotees of Krishna enter the Krishna planet, or Goloka Vrindavan, whereas the impressionists remain in the Brahma Jyoti. The personists also enter many innumerable planets in the spiritual sky, known as Vaikunthas.
Text 14. Ananyacheta satatam vyomam smarati nityashah tasyaham sulabha partha nityayuktasya yoginah. Translation. For one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pratap, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Purport. In this verse, the Bhakti Yoga of the unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Lord is described. The preceding verses mention 4 different kinds of devotees: the distressed, the inquisitive, those who seek material gain, and the speculative philosophers. Different processes of liberation from material entanglement have also been described: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and the Hatha Yoga. But here, Bhakti Yoga, without any mixture of these, is mentioned. In Bhakti Yoga, the devotees desire nothing but Krishna. The pure Bhakti devotee does not desire promotion to heavenly planets, nor does he seek salvation or liberation from material entanglement. A pure devotee does not desire anything. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pure devotee is called Nishkama, which means he has no desire for self-interest. Perfect peace belongs to him alone, not to them who strive for personal gain. The pure devotee only wants to please the Supreme Lord, and so the Lord says that for anyone who is unflinchingly devoted to him, he is easy to attain. The devotee can render service to any of the transcendental forms of the Supreme Lord, and he meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. Bhakti Yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin by simply chanting Hare Krishna. Krishna is very merciful to those who engage in his service, and he helps in various ways. The devotee who is fully surrendered to him, so he can understand him as he is. The Lord gives such a devotee sufficient intelligence so that ultimately the devotee can attain him in his spiritual kingdom. The special qualification of the pure devotee is that he is always thinking of Krishna without considering the time or place. There should be no impediments. He should be able to carry out his service anywhere and at any time. Some say that the devotee should remain in a holy place like Vrindavan or some holy town where the Lord lived. But a pure devotee can live anywhere and create the atmosphere of Vrindavan by his devotional service. It was Sri Advaita who told Lord Chaitanya, "Wherever you go, O Lord, there is Vrindavan." A pure devotee constantly remembers Krishna and meditates upon him. These are qualifications of the pure devotees for whom the Lord is most easily attainable. Bhakti Yoga is the system that the Gita recommends above all others. Generally, the Bhakti Yogis are engaged in 5 different ways. Shanta Bhakta, engaged in devotional service in neutrality. Dasya Bhakta, engaged in devotional service as servant. Sakhya Bhakta, engaged as friend. Vatsalya Bhakta, engaged as parent. And Madhurya Bhakta, engaged as conjugal lover of the Supreme Lord. In any of these, the pure devotee is always constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord and cannot forget the Supreme Lord. And so for him, the Lord is easily attained. A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment. And similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment. This is the great blessing of the Krishna consciousness process of chanting the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna.
Text 15. Mam yupetya punarjanma dukkaya yama shasvatam Translation. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Purport. Since this temporary material world is full of the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death, naturally he who achieves the highest perfection and attains the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan, does not wish to return. The supreme planet is described in Vedic literature as beyond our material vision and is considered the highest planet. The Mahatmas, great souls, receive transcendental messages from the realized devotees and thus gradually develop devotional service in Krishna consciousness and become so absorbed in transcendental service that they no longer desire elevation to any of the material planets, nor do they even want to be transferred to any spiritual planet. They only want Krishna's association and nothing else. Such great souls in Krishna consciousness attain the highest perfection of life. In other words, they are the supreme souls.
Text 16. Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avartinarjuna mam pedya kunteya punar janmana vidyate. Translation. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. All kinds of yogis, karma, jnana, hatha, etc., eventually have to attain devotional perfection in bhakti yoga or Krishna consciousness before they can go to Krishna's transcendental abode and never return. Those who attain the highest material planets, or the planets of the demigods, are again subjected to repeated birth and death. As persons on earth are elevated to higher planets, people in higher planets such as Brahmaloka, Chandraloka, and Indraloka fall down to earth. The practice of sacrifice called Panchagni Vidya, recommended in the Katha Upanishad, enables one to achieve Brahmaloka. But if, in Brahmaloka, one does not cultivate Krishna consciousness, then he must return to earth. Those who progress in Krishna consciousness in the higher planets are gradually elevated to higher and higher planets, and at the time of universal devastation are transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom. When there is devastation of this material universe, Brahma and his devotees, who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness, are all transferred to the spiritual universe, and so into specific spiritual planets according to their desires. I just want to say something about this text, this purport. So Prabhupada was just saying that it's just a quick little nuanced detail that I learned while I was listening to Prabhupada one day. But basically what he's saying is, where does he say? Oh, okay. The practice of sacrifice in the middle of the purport. The practice of sacrifice called Panchagni Vidya, recommended in the Katha Upanishad, enables one to achieve Brahmaloka. But if, in Brahmaloka, one does not cultivate Krishna consciousness, then he must return to earth. So this Brahmaloka is not Satyaloka. It's not Brahma's planet. It's actually the Brahma Jyoti. So that's what he means. Like if you do these sacrifices and you go and you die, you go to the Brahma Jyoti. But if you don't cultivate Krishna consciousness while you're there, you will fall down back to the material world. But it says if you're a devotee of Brahma and you're constantly engaging in Krishna consciousness, then you're transferred to the spiritual universe and specific spiritual planets according to your desires.
Text 17. Sahasrayuga paryantam iharyat brahmano viduho ratrim yuga sahasrantam deho ratra vido janah. Translation. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together is the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. The duration of the material universe is limited. It is manifested in cycles of kalpas. Kalpa is a day of Brahma, and one day of Brahma consists of 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas or ages: Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. The cycle of Satya is characterized by virtue, wisdom, and religion, there being practically no ignorance and vice, and the yuga lasts 17,28,000 years. In the Treta Yuga, vice is introduced, and this yuga lasts 12,96,000 years. In the Dwapara Yuga, there is an even greater decline in virtue and religion, vice increasing, and this yuga lasts 8,64,000 years. And finally, in Kali Yuga, the yuga which we have been experiencing over the past 5,000 years, there is an abundance of strife, ignorance, irreligion, vice, true virtue being practically non-existent, and this yuga lasts 4,32,000 years. In Kali Yuga, vice increases to such a point that at the termination of the yuga, the Supreme Lord himself appears as the Kalki avatar, vanquishes the demons, saves his devotees, and commences another Satya Yuga. Then the process is set rolling again. These 4 yugas, rotating 1,000 times, comprise one day of Brahma, the creator god, and the same number comprise one night. Brahma lives 100 such years and then dies. These 100 years by earth calculation total to 311 trillion and 40 million earth years. By these calculations, the life of Brahma seems fantastic and interminable, but from the viewpoint of eternity, it is as brief as a lightning flash. In the cosmic ocean, there are innumerable Brahmas rising and disappearing like bubbles in the Atlantic. Brahma and his creation are all part of the material universe, and therefore they are in constant flux. In the material universe, not even Brahma is free from the process of birth, old age, disease, and death. Brahma, however, is directly engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord in the management of this universe. Therefore, he at once attains liberation. Elevated sannyasis are promoted to the Brahma's particular planet, Brahmaloka, which is the highest planet in the material world, in the material universe, and which survives all the heavenly planets in the upper strata of the planetary system. But in due course, Brahma and all inhabitants of Brahmaloka are subject to death, according to law of material nature.
So what I just said, I'm having a doubt about it. So if you want to learn more about it, I would ask a more experienced devotee, but I think I might have been wrong about that. So,
Just Brahmaloka here is,
yeah.
here it's telling me it's the Lord Brahma.
Same thing, yeah. I didn't know that was what was going to happen. So, yeah, if you feel like you want to know more about it, I would ask Maharaj or Radha Shampoo or something like that. What?
Let's get Radha Shampoo to give us a class.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Better than me giving class.
Text 18. Avyakya sara prabhavantya harame ratriyame paliyante tatrayvyapya samyaninake. Translation. When Brahma's day is manifest, this multitude of living entities comes into being, and at the arrival of Brahma's night, they are all annihilated. Purport. The less intelligent jivas try to remain within this material world and are accordingly elevated and degraded in the various planetary systems. During the daytime of Brahman, they exhibit their activities, and at the coming of Brahma's night they are annihilated. In the day they receive various bodies for material activities, and at night these bodies perish. The jivas, individual souls, remain compact in the body of Vishnu, and again are manifest at the arrival of Brahma's day. When Brahma's life is finally finished, they are all annihilated and remain unmanifest for millions and millions of years. Finally, when Brahma is born again in another millennium, they are again manifest. In this way, the jivas are captivated by the material world. However, those intelligent beings who take to Krishna consciousness and chant Hare Krishna, Hare Rama in devotional service transfer themselves, even in this life, to the spiritual planet of Krishna and become eternally blissful there, not being subject to such rebirths. Bhagavad Gita Ki. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Smells good. Can we lay down?